don't know if we're on or not. He normally comes out and goes.
I'm ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Castle Point Cabinet meeting. May I, before I start, welcome our new Chief Executive, Angela Hutchins. This is our first official Cabinet with us. So, Angela, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair.
I'm sure you'll get on well with everybody. Now, next I would like the Cabinet members to present themselves, and I'll start with Councillor Cole.
Good evening, Mr Chairman. My name is Councillor Stephen Cole and I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council for Special Projects.
Councillor Russ Savage, and I'm Cabinet for People and Community.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gibson, Cabinet Member, Place and Infrastructure.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Angela. Councillor Barry Palmer, Regeneration and Economic Growth.
Good evening, everyone. Councillor Mrs H for People, Health, Wellbeing and Housing.
Good evening, Chairman. Councillor Michael Fuller, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Thank you very much, and I'm Councillor Dave Blackwell, Leader of the Council. Okay, have we any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Mountford.
And Councillor Mumford, we know, has got COVID, so we wish him well. Is item 2 is a member's interest. Has any member got an interest? If not, members, as the meeting goes on and you think you may have interest as it goes on, then please feel free to actually declare at that present time. Item 3 is the minutes. Our members, the Cabinet meeting held on the 15th of June. On the minutes, agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, members' questions. We've been notified that questions from Councillor Isaacs, Councillor McLean, Councillor Skipp, Councillor Sue Mumford, Councillor Chas Mumford have given notice they wish to ask questions on the agenda. Councillor Riley. Oh, sorry, yes, I've got you down here, Councillor Riley, on the latest list. And Councillor Hart, I've got you down as well. Thank you very much. So, item 4 is the forward plan. Councillor Cole.
Good evening, Mr Chairman, and good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen. The corporate plan is in front of you. I will now pass this over to Councillor Fuller, who would like to make a statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'd like to read a statement. It concerns the financial update report. The Cabinet forward plan indicates that a financial update report would be presented to Cabinet tonight, which would include an updated financial forecast. Initial indications are that the cost of living crisis, including impact of national pay negotiations, is likely to have a significant impact on the Council's spending plans from the current financial year. It is therefore appropriate to defer the financial update report at this time to allow time for Cabinet to consider the full potential impact of these factors on the Council's budget. A comprehensive update will therefore be presented to Cabinet in September. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I will move on to item 5, and this is the corporate performance score chart for the quarter of 4. This is the performance score chart report for the quarter of 4 of 2021/22. In other words, the performance up to the end of March 22 before the change of administration in the May elections. The corporate scorecard reports on performances indicators for important services outcomes that are relevant to the Council's priorities. The indicators and targets for the corporate performance scorecard for 21-22 were considered and approved by Cabinet in July 2021. I will now give a summary of the report. Councillors will notice that there are a number of additional performance indicators reported at Q4. Many of these have come from responses to the Council's annual Satisfaction and Perception Survey. This survey was promoted online over May and June, with hard copies of the surveys made available at the main reception in the Council offices and at our 4 libraries across the Borough. Despite substantial reach across the social media channels, the number of responses was disappointing at 125, with no hard copies returned. So caution should be taken interpreting the results. This new administration intends to be holding a number of focus groups starting in the autumn, and we will be able to hold a more in-depth discussion, and it is hoped that with better communication we will start to see better results in our surveys. You have all had a copy of the report, so I'm just going to raise some highlights under each of the Council's priorities. Economic and growth. The number of apprenticeships started in Castle Point fell to 370 in 21-22, down from 520 in the previous year. This trend was seen across the whole of Essex, with a number of starters declining by an average of 35%. The number of businesses in Castle Point fell to 3,255 in 21, from 3,390 in the previous year. 95% of these businesses are micro businesses, which means between 0 to 9 employees. 930 or 29% of businesses are in construction. One of the reasons that could be interpreted from these results is still the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, where businesses were still on hold due to this virus, and businesses closing down simply that they may have run out of money and were forced to go under. We will keep an eye on this indicator to see what happens to these businesses in 2022. Leisure survey. Satisfaction with our leisure services is measured by a Net Promoter Score. Basically, those who use the leisure centres recommend them to others. Waterside Farm scored 69 and Runnymede scored 70. These scores are a bit lower than usual, as there were some issues with card payment systems. But I would like to say to the officers who looked after our leisure services are doing a fantastic job, and these scores are still well above national average for leisure centres, which is around 40 to 45. I'm also pleased to report that from the last 30 days, the scores are 81 for Waterside Farm and 78 for Runnymede. The number of leisure memberships stood at 3,700 at the end of the financial year, which was more than double the number of memberships at the same time last year. The Fort Gym extension at Waterside Farm is proving to be a successful investment. Allotment vacancies increased over the quarter to 24, as several plots were handed back and some were taken back due to non-payment. Overall, 130 of the 154 plots are now being used. This, members, is where better communication will make more residents aware of this fantastic resource and reduce the number of vacant plots in the future. Food hygiene. You may have seen stickers on restaurants, takeaways on their windows. Of the 507 food premises in the borough, 496 were classified as broadly compliant with food regulations. That's a score of 3 or above on the food hygiene ratings. There are 5 stars, we have 435. 4 stars, there are 43. 3, there are 18. 2, there are 3. 1, there are 8. Environment. The percentage of household waste recycling or compost, including food waste, was 48% and 2% lower than the same period previous year and just below the target. A couple of reasons for this. Dry recycling tonnage has decreased by 14% over a year. Pink sacks contamination have increased, meaning less has been able to be recycled. A report is coming to Cabinet about changes to recycling and what way we are moving forward in addressing this situation. Fly tipping removal is above target, maintaining high levels of performance with a 99% of it removed within 1 working day. The number of fly tips recorded is as follows: 89 in January, 16 in February and 67 in March. The percentage of residents to the annual survey who were satisfied with household waste collection, including recycling and composting, was 87%, an increase from 84% in 21 and above target. This is the highest satisfaction level of all council services, and I would like to thank the crews for continuing to collect our refuse and recycling during this very hot weather we are having. The baseline calculation for our CO2 produced from the council buildings and operations was undertaken using 2019/20 data to avoid the impact of COVID for 21-22. Of the total figure of 2,556 tonnes of CO2, 41% of the emissions came from heating, 29% from electrical use, and 27% from the council fleet. As a new administration, the environment is at the forefront of our minds. As I said earlier, Cabinet will be presented with a report shortly, looking into our household waste recycling and also our refuge vehicles. This is just one of a many proposals of how we can cut our CO2 emissions and eventually become a carbon neutral council. The Wheelie Bin Garden waste collection services is comfortably above target and a sufficient increase on the 11,719 subscribers at the end of 2021, which now stands at 13,543. The percentage of response to the annual survey who agreed that there is a strong sense of community in the local area was just 50%, which is below the target of 65% set at the beginning of the year. The new administration places priority on strong communities, and this is an area where we will focus and hopefully see an improvement in this score next year. The proportion of residents to the annual survey who felt safe after dark was 48%, which was below the target of 50%. Perceptions of crime is far greater than actual crime levels in the borough, but we can delve deeper into this, Cabinet, when we start holding our community liaison groups. Tenant satisfaction with repairs and maintenance was high, with 94% of tenants rating work undertaken by the contractor at least 7.5 out of 10. Thank you for your attention, and while I presented this report, there is still lots of detail in there, and I think it is important that as councillors we understand the performance of the organisation, celebrating our success and working to address the performance where it falls below target. I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. A very comprehensive report. Thank you very much. Right, Cabinet members, are there any questions? No? Okay, then sorry, Councillor Russell.
With respect to the environmental element of it, I mean, we're looking at the financial situation of the whole country at the moment, not just, our council, but, if we've got any avenue by which we can A, save money and B, be more environmentally friendly, I think we should take it. So in terms of the refuge vehicles, I was aware when I was on the environment last year that the vehicles are due for replacement now. And I think that's something that we really need to focus on the way we deliver that service to A, improve the environment, and B, to save ourselves a few bob.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That report is actually coming back to Cabinet, and we are looking at the refuge, which falls into line with how we are collecting our rubbish as well, whether we go to wheelie bins or not. And we have to prioritise that if we were to turn to wheelie bins, then we have to get the correct vehicles. We cannot go for wheelie bins and get normal vehicles because they will not work. So this is in the pipeline and will be coming to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the pink bags, the number of pink bags that are spoilt, because you get a whole pink bag could be spoilt just because there's a crisp packet in it. I know we've tried in the past to educate people as to what they're going to be putting in there, but it didn't help when there was a change of policy at the recycling centres where certain things are not allowed to go in anymore. But I know that's one of the things that we're going to help to address as well, isn't it?
That's correct, Councillor. In this new report, as we said earlier on, we will be looking at our refuge collection, whether we're using wheelie bins, are we going to be using more sacks? This is all in the report that will be presented to Cabinet, and then we can have a real delve into it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Members who are not on the Cabinet, any questions? Right. I'll start with Colin McLean. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of questions, if you don't mind, to the Cabinet Member. In the PE001, percentage of people who agree there's a strong sense of community, the Cabinet Member made reference to the new administration improving community within our borough, which I think is a little unfair, if I'm honest. I think that there are some excellent community groups already been working that whole period of time. But am I right in thinking that the Castle Point residents survey for 2022 was only 125 people? Is that what was said?
That is correct.
Okay. So would it be fair to the community groups that are working within the local area if there was a further survey taken out? I think you said it would be next year, so an annual survey, perhaps a 6-monthly one where we could get a few more numbers, because I'm not sure that we can. I'm not sure it should be on the corporate scorecard, if I'm perfectly honest, with 125 people. That 50% is not relevant. And the second question was on PP003, number of new affordable homes in the borough. Obviously, there was an assumption from the previous administration that the local plan would come forward at some point, so perhaps the plans for affordable housing were put to one side. But obviously, if we're now looking at a new local plan for the borough, is there any work ongoing within our planning team to identify sites suitable for affordable homes in the meantime, before we come to a new local plan?
With regards to your last question with the local plan, I will answer that question, and then your previous question, Ben will answer. The Ian Butt is actually at present working on a new local plan, and he is discussing all options available. We are looking at affordable housing. That will be one of our top agendas. We need to look after our residents. We need to look after everyone, and it will all be on there, but it'll be coming forward shortly.
And could I just say on that, we are looking to set up a cross-party working group on the local plan. So, you know, we'll be going to the leaders, we'll be sitting down to discuss who we want on that local plan, because I think it is so important that the whole council work together to make sure that we get a local plan, like you say, must include social housing, which is a big need in this borough. So, you know, we are looking to work with all groups to actually formulate a new local plan. Councillor Mumford. Oh, sorry.
Just a response in terms of the survey. So yes, I mean, disappointed to have 125 responses. I think last time around we got about 330, so not loads more, but I think we need around sort of just under 400 for it to be what they call the sort of statistically significant response rate. You know, so it's not like we need to get thousands out of the borough, but 125, you've got to be really careful in the way you interpret those. There is a plan, I think, to redo the survey probably similar sort of time next year, and we'll sort of see how we can get the response rates up to that. In the meantime, I know that the administration are also considering other ways that they might be able to engage with communities, maybe through some sort of form of focus groups or something along those lines. So I think that will probably give us some slightly better qualitative data in terms of actually what people think, because that particular one was quite low and didn't seem to reflect a lot of the conversations that I've had with people around the strength of communities. So yeah, that was a bit of an anomaly, I think, which is why I said, you know, you need to, or Councillor Cole said, you need to just exercise a bit of caution on these surveys, on these survey results sometimes, because it was a pretty disappointing response rate. Yeah.
Councillor Chas Mumford.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple from me on economy and
growth, and thank you, Councillor Cole, for explaining the reasons behind the disappointing downtrend in both the number of businesses in the borough and indeed apprenticeships. I think it's clear that going forward we need some recommendations as to how we're going to reverse that trend, if that could be at all possible. And also, I was looking at the Acela meeting from here the other day, which was extremely interesting, the strands that are coming forward from Acela. And it's clear to me that we need in Castle Point really to get to grips with our training and development of our people right across the piece, looking at the jobs that are going to be coming online, hopefully across the region. So slightly disappointed when I read in the economy and growth bit, it says it's not been possible to use an existing or establish a new data source to provide information on local skill shortages as reported by local businesses. Do you agree that's something that we need to get a hold of and get a grip of quite urgently? And secondly, do Cabinet support the aim of Acela in the creation of a South Essex Technical University, and what do you see are the benefits for Castle Point? Thank you.
I got to be honest, we were a little bit sceptical about Acela, and I've got to say that our new chief exec gave us a very good presentation on it, and talking to the leaders of all the other councils, I was quite impressed it was all about employment. It was all about giving the youngsters a start in life, education, getting them into the right skills to fit into the right jobs. And we are short of a lot of skillful people. And I think Acela is part of their university, South East Essex University, is what they want to create. When you look at, we've got maybe the Thames Freeport's going to create 21,000 jobs. They will need highly trained and highly skilled jobs for that. And so we fully support that, and I fully support anything which is going to give the youngsters an opportunity for a good job, a highly skilled job, and I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Sue Mumford.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cole, for a very comprehensive report. My question is about People Performance Measure PE002 allotments. The target for the allocation of allotments is off target and declining, with 24 usable plots unused as compared to 15 last quarter. I'm assuming that there is a waiting list for allotments, so can I ask how long before they can be allocated? Also, I'm assuming that there are some unusable plots, so do we know how many there are and when they will be brought back into use? And can I just also add what a fantastic community project has been set up with the community allotment, and I'm sure you'll all agree that it's very successful, and we wish that to continue. Thank you.
While the officers just looking, can I just say, Councillor Mumford, that with most allotments, they're run by the local horticultural societies, and sometimes it's been a bug of mine that there's been unused allotments, and I think it's changed, because what used to happen, as long as the person paid the rent, it could stay unused for years, and in the old days, people used to actually bank that allotment for somebody in the family at a later date. That can't be allowed to happen. I think people now want to go on to allotment, and it's an amazing thing to do, and we've got some amazing allotments in this area, and I think anything the council can do to get rid of old unused plots and allow someone to go on it, I think we should do.
I totally agree with that. I think, especially in today's times when the cost of everything is going up, it's great if people can actually begin to grow their own produce. Thank you.
And I think just putting my horticultural hat on here, and I think really sometimes people find a big plot is too much for them. So I think we should be looking, or the horticulture should be looking, can they split the plot in two so it allows more people to have a go at growing their own? Thank you. Right, Councillor Skip. Oh, sorry. Councillor Savage?
I think...
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, was all your questions answered?
Yes, just not sort of about the actual number of unusable plots. Do you know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
154 plots in our borough, and overall 130 of the 154 are now in use. So there's 24 that are not in use at this present moment in time, and
I think some of these are unusable. I just wondered, you know, when they were going to be brought back into a usable state that they can be used. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify on the numbers, so 154 is the number of usable plots, so that's why we use that as our figure against which we calculate this. I don't know how many unusables, but the team that manage these don't put those ones forward. If they're unusable or unworkable, we wouldn't include them. So the 154 figure in here is the number of usable plots that we have.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Savage.
Part of my question has been asked by Ben, but going back to Councillor Sue Mumford's question, I think a frustration of mine when I first got elected was people saying to me, we've been asking the council for years for an allotment. It's not a subject that I've got a great deal of knowledge about, and that they don't know who to speak to get hold of that information. How do they get onto a list to actually get an allotment, etc., etc. So is that clear and concise for the, you know, have we got a process by which people apply for the allotments? Because I think there's a lack of transparency there.
I'm sure the council's got a list of what horticultural society runs the allotments, because it's easier for a horticultural society to run it for the council than the council to run it herself. They understand what they're doing. But can I just go back to Councillor Sue Mumford? Do we still include, there used to be an allotments the other side of the railway track at South Benfleet Wreck, and it was a total waste of time because they had no water. And so that was then, nobody went on there because it was a waste of time. So I'm not so sure. Is that, Ben, is that still classified as allotment area? And that, if it is, that might be why it's not being used.
I don't know exactly all the individual allotments, but just to be clear again, so these are the allotment plots that are owned and managed by Castle Point Borough Council. We know that there are other allotment sites which are managed by horticultural societies across the borough. Right. So that's what this one is talking about. And in terms of the process, there will be a process that people will be able to sort of like basically go through to get on that list. But, you know, I can go back to the team that manages these and get a note out to councillors just so you're absolutely clear about what that process is. Yeah. Thank you.
I think my point being is that there's, I think if there's 20 or 30 empty slots there, I think we'd fill them 10 times over. That's the point I'm trying to make. I think it's just the fact that people just don't necessarily know whether they're council allotments or whether they are private or cultural societies that are running.
That's a comment.
As I said earlier on during the statement, it all comes down to communication, and it is getting out there, addressing the residents' concerns and speaking to them, and that is what this new administration is looking forward to on our focus groups, and being more open and understanding and giving the information that is out there which we come across.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask, does that include the 2 sites that's run by the Town Council? I know they are on Borough Council land. Because I'm just going to say, there's a waiting list for the Town Council, so if there's some people who wouldn't mind going to the one on Benfleet, for example, and fill up a plot, then there should be some sort of liaison between Dell, I think it is, who looks after the Town Council ones, and whoever's looking after the Borough Council. Thank you.
No, can I just say, the Town Council, they own those allotments. It's nothing to do with Castle Point. That's the only thing the Town Council does own, is the allotments. Right. Oh, Councillor Mumford, do you want to come back?
Yes, so it's not a question, it's just a point really. I think in this day and age when we're very concerned about mental health and well-being, especially, you know, sort of after lockdown, I think these allotments are absolutely fantastic asset to the community, and I do totally agree that we need to get the communication out there to the people. Thank you very much.
Totally agree, because more people took up gardening in the lockdown than anything else, and I think it saved people's mental health big time. Councillor Skip.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Before I ask my question, I'd like to obviously comment about the last discussion, because I have 2 allotments in my ward. One's the bigger one and a smaller one as well. So I'm pleased to hear that, you know, of the progress being made, and hope it does continue and get these vacant, you know, plots back online as soon as we can. You know, it's quite important to my residents that they are, as far as I know, there is a waiting list, so I'm pleased that is now being tackled. My question now relates to performance measure SS001 primarily, which is a satisfaction of council's efforts to keep public land clear of litter and refuse, verge grass cutting, etc. Right now, I'm concerned that this very important measure appears to be off target and declining at the current moment in time. Our open spaces are very important, to our public for all sorts of reasons, and I think it's quite important that we have a management plan in place for all of our open space sites to ensure that there is a programme ahead for improving this, especially as this is what the public are saying. I hear what was said about there is the lack of response, but we only got what we have, and this is what we have to look at as a measure. And if I can give an example, I mean, Woodside Park, which is a very key site for leisure and recreation in our borough, has a performance management plan, which according to our website is now out of date. So I'm wondering really, if there are plans to produce a more current management plan for that particular site, and also, the same for all our open spaces. Are there management plans in place for all our open spaces? Are they now up to date and current, please?
Thank you, Councillor Skip. I'll tell you, the one thing we are. Oh, Ben. No, I was just going to make a point to say that the one thing this council wants to do is a big scale community engagement. It's so important that we talk to our residents, and I think that's the one thing most councils tend to forget. And I think really it's so important to go out there and listen to your people, what you want to say. And I think not everybody wants to go online and fill a form in, and that's the problem nowadays. I think we should go and meet people, and we will meet people, and everyone will be involved. I think that's the only way to do it. If we're all involved, going out, talking to people, we can get a true story of what's really going on. But Ben has done a lot of hard work on this, I know he has. Right, Ben.
Just very quickly on that particular question. So again, this is one where I think because of this very low response rate that we've got, we just need to be a little bit careful about interpreting these. If you look at the performance of the contract, and we've got some other measures in there in terms of things like fly tip removal, it's actually very, very good. So I think there's a bit of a discrepancy between what people are saying in the survey response and actually what's happening with the contractor. We know the contract is in the process of being looked at the moment to be re-let very soon. So I think all these sorts of things will be picked up. But again, I think just sort of adding to what the leader said, in terms of just this need to get out there, have these conversations and really sort of listen to what people say. So again, just some caution, I think, in terms of interpreting this. It's a number which is declining, but we did only have a small number of responses to the survey.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Skip, you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I do understand that, and I fully accept that this was a low figure to work on. But the fundamental of my question was regarding the management plans for all of open space sites, and we need to ensure that they are all current and relevant now to today. And this is why, maybe you can't give me the information now, but if you can later on as to do we have a management plan in place for all of our sites? Are they up to date? And do they need updating?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chairman. My question goes back to the local plan, and really it's highlighted by the score item on page 4 of your report, Councillor Cole. And really, I sit here as one of the most senior councillors on this council, and I am concerned, really. The question is what strategy are you guys going to bring forward now that you've brought this local plan to this position? I'm hearing what you're saying, Chairman, about this working group, which is good, but the subsequent question to that is what endeavour are we, or how are we going to be involved in the opposition? I've been around a long time, and I really want to make sure that we get fully involved in this proposal as it comes forward.
I think the answer to your question is I don't think you can do a local plan unless everyone's involved. I think it would be a disaster if one group tries to do it on its own. I think you've all got to do it. That way you can pick and make. Look, nobody wants to build on greenfields. So it's going to be difficult, not going to be easy to pick a local plan. But, you know, we've got good officers working on it. And I think, you know, as councillors, we've got to, we will be talking to Godfrey and Stephen, sit down and decide, you know, it's up to each leader of each group to decide who wants to go on that committee. But it is important that everybody is fully focused and involved. And I think that is so important, you know. It's a sort of thing that we've all got to put the politics to one side and work hard to try and approve something which our residents want us to do. I'm sure you'll be involved, Councillor Bartley.
Can I just come back? I mean, I just want to recall my concern. That I hope that things don't overtake us, you know, from the point of view that we've had a plan that's been sort of approved or accepted by a government inspector. So I'm not, I understand what's got to happen, but I'm just very concerned that I want to record it here that I hope that, you know, we've got time to do this and work together to bring forward a successful plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Okay, members, no more questions. So, is the recommendation agreed? Thank you very much. Right, item 6, Public Space Protection Order. Councillor Savage.
Yes, so the purpose of the report, and apologies up front, it's quite a detailed report. I'm not going to read it as wrote because, you know, it would be all right. I will read the first page in terms of the purpose of the report and the recommendation, and I've then taken out the salient, what I think are the salient points in the latter pages. I will potentially need some assistance if questions are asked on the legal front from Mr Bishop and Mel's here to support me if there's anything else that I don't understand. I was, however, on the Environmental Policy and Scrutiny Committee at that meeting to discuss this order, so I have got a detailed knowledge of the issue and why we are here discussing this today. So the purpose of the report is to receive the report back from the Environment Policy and Scrutiny Committee on the response of consultation on the possibility of the Council making a Public Space Protection Order, a PSPO, under Section 59 Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014 to address activities in the vicinity of Roscommon Way, Canvey Island. So to be clear on that, this is from Canvey Marsh where Roscommon Way comes round past Morrison's, joins onto Haven Road, goes back onto Canvey Road and back down towards the marsh. So it's that central area, that's the area that we're actually specifically talking about. To consider whether the statutory criteria are met and if necessary, it is necessary and proportionate response to the issues that have been identified to proceed to make such an order. Links to Council's priorities and objectives. This report is linked to the Council priority people, obviously. And the recommendation, if Cabinet is satisfied and the conditions under Section 59 of the Act are met, the activities carried out on public place with the Council's area have had a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, or it is likely that activities will be carried on in a public place within that area and that they will have such an effect. The second condition is that the effect or likely effect of the activities is or is likely to be of a persistent and continuing nature, is or is likely to be such as to make the activities unreasonable, and thirdly, justifies the restrictions imposed by this notice. So the recommendation 1 is that the necessary steps should be taken to implement a PSPO to provide an appropriate and robust response to address the behaviours taking place in and around Roscommon Way, Canvey Island as defined in the draft order appended to the report. And 2, that the Environment Policy and Scrutiny Committee undertake a regular review and monitoring of the PSPO once it's in place. So the background, I think we all know the background of this. So pretty much from when Roscommon Way was built, 2012, it's 10 years. The residents of that area have had to put up with quite some significant issues with respect to noise, speeding cars, such and such. So to assist in the decision as to whether to proceed to make a public space protection order, it's tackling behaviour which has a detrimental impact on the quality of life of those in the area, traditionally seen as antisocial behaviour. So despite enforcement activity by the police, the problems on Roscommon Way have persisted. So Essex Police have confirmed their support for the introduction of this PSPO. In fact, they actually basically said, you know, we want you to do this, so it gives us a little bit more meat. Canvey Island is ineffectively is in a bowl. Sound is trapped, and the noise of the racing vehicles can be heard from the other side of the island. In fact, I live in Benfleet on the high road, and I can actually hear those vehicles from where I live. So I'm a good mile or so to the north of that. So I understand that issue. This antisocial behaviour is seriously impacting upon the ability of residents to get to sleep. So I mentioned previously that Essex Police have been receiving reports of antisocial behaviour since the road opened in 2012. Due to its perceived remote location and easy access on and off the island, it's become what is termed as an alternative or secondary location to cruisers. These cruisers often meet up at Festival Leisure Park in Basildon, and once moved on by police will come to Roscommon Way. This issue has been going back as long as Southend Seafront, as long as Lakeside Thurrock, and we know what happened in Stamford Le Hope only a couple of years ago on the Manorway, where that young lady lost a leg due to the serious injuries that she sustained after a vehicle collided with her on the road there. So we know what the consequences of these sort of issues are. There are 3 roundabouts. Offenders race each other along the carriageway at high speed and perform drifting around the respective roundabouts. This is sometimes called out in front of a large crowd with up to 100 spectators who line the unlit dual carriageway only metres from racing cars passing them at speed. The issue has occurred since 2012, but due to the type of traffic and classification of the road, it's not feasible to implement any traffic calming measures. During 2012, the police put in place several dispersal orders under the 2014 Act, which required individuals or groups to leave a specific area and not to return within a specific period of not more than 48 hours. So basically, they had no meat. You know, they just rocked up a couple of weeks later or a week later, and the police had no other sort of effective method by which to stop this occurring. So it's considered that the PSP under the 2014 Act may provide a useful additional measure to tackle the persistent and unreasonable activities currently taking place around Roscommon Way. So the Council was required under the Act to carry out a consultation and necessary publicity and notifications before making a PSPO as prescribed by Section 72 of the Act. As a minimum, the Council must consult with the Chief Officer of Police, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, appropriate community representatives, the owners of occupied land, where reasonably practical. And there's a lot of duplication in this, and it mentions that 3 or 4 times within the report. They've also consulted with the Canvey Town Council and our MP, because that they are other people that may be affected or need to be discussed to discuss this. In terms of Environment, Policy and Scrutiny Committee, the committee met on 29th of June 2022, and as I said, I was at that meeting, to consider the response to the consultation and decide on recommendations to Cabinet. A 6-week online consultation open to residents who live, work or visit the area was undertaken. There was a great response. A total of 302 responses received, and of those, 260 have witnessed or been affected by vehicle antisocial behaviour in the area. That's approximately 86% of the people that responded. The highest behaviours, effects of antisocial behaviour, noise, racing, dangerous driving with large groups congregating, being the next largest. Of the 302 respondents, 277 would support the introduction of a PSPO, which is roughly 92%. The statutory consultation was undertaken directly with Essex Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Essex Council Highways, ward councillors and 6 landowners. And I would like to say at this moment that I had no input into that. This is all work that's been previously done by people like Councillor May and Councillor Isaacs, and a lot of good efforts gone in across party to get to where we are today. So the committee considered enforcement of the PSPO. There is this does come into a legal thing where there are penalties on breaches. So the enforcement authority can decide that a fixed penalty notice, an FPN, of £100 would be the most appropriate sanction. In fact, Southend, Thurrock and across the country is pretty much what other councils and authorities do. The issue of the fixed penalty notices, breach of an PSPO can be witnessed and an FPN issued by a police officer or a council official. However, the council doesn't currently have officers to carry out this role, so the enforcement of the PSPO will therefore fall entirely on Essex Police within the current capacity and subject to their priorities. Members discussed and raised concerns regarding enforcement, obviously noting that this would rely on good officers of the police for enforcement. This is where, and I've just put an addendum here, where we really have to hold the police to account to some degree, because they've said to us, we really want this PSPO, and now we have to, as a committee and as a group, say, right, hang on a minute, we're expecting you now to undertake your part of the deal, as it were. So the committee agreed that the PSPO would give the police additional powers and assistance, whilst the PSPO could not stop dangerous driving and noise. This would be a positive step in resolving the situation as a deterrent. The committee have evaluated the response to the consultation and implications decided. 1, to recommend to Cabinet the necessary steps should be taken to implement the PSPO to provide an appropriate and robust response to the behaviours taken in the Roscommon Way area. That the Environment Policy and Scrutiny Committee undertake review and monitoring, as I said previously. Cabinet is invited to consider the recommendations of the Environment Policy and Scrutiny Committee and review the corporate implications and decide whether to proceed with this order. So, the financial implications. There's no separate budgetary provision at the moment for making a legal enforceable order. An extract budgetary provision will have to be allocated by the council. Extra budgetary provision will have to be allocated by the council, including initial setup of costs. Initial funding will require for maps, signage, and the fixed penalty notice paperwork approximately £4,000. It's worth noting that if the fixed penalty is not paid, then the individual can be prosecuted in breach of the PSPO, and there would be potentially a legal cost to the council, which could be in the order of £600 to £1,000 per court case. Now, obviously, we would look to get reimbursed for that on a positive outcome, but that is a risk. So the legal implications. The Act contains the provisions making the PSPO under Section 59 of the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime Policing Act 2014. As with any relatively recent legislation of its type, these remain untested grounds, and the legislation will be further defined in the years to come by a process of appeals and High Court rulings. Any legal challenges present a risk to the authority. So implementation of the order states that interested persons may challenge the validity of any order in the High Courts, which means that the Council could face a challenge against the ability to implement the order. There are 3 grounds upon which challenge can be made: that the local authority do not have the power to make the order or the variation, or to include particular prohibitions, that a requirement under the element of the legislation has not been complied with in relation to the order or variation, and that the High Court has the power to quash, amend or uphold the order, may suspend the operation of PSPO pending a verdict. As with all orders and powers, the making of a PSPO can be challenged by judicial review or on public law grounds within 3 months of the decision of the action, subject to challenge. The penalty for breaches of PSPO relate to fixed penalty notices and fines alone, which may lead to significant levels of non-payment. If the penalty is not paid, then the individual can be prosecuted for a breach of the PSPO in the Magistrates' Court. In order to implement PSPO, the procedure under Section 70 of the Act must be followed. So there's 4 areas, and they basically come down to human rights, the necessary consultation, and there are various parts of that we need to understand, that the fact that we need to consult with owners of the land. So Morrison's, for example, could say, well, we might lose business here if we don't have people parking in their car park. Now, as it turns out, they were consulted and they actually do want this to be stopped on their car park. So, the larger businesses were all positive towards the PSPO. The parish councils there previously, and Essex County Council. So in any event of a PSPO, in any event, a PSPO lasts only for 3 years and requires review every 3 years, which is an expensive and time-consuming process. Such a review and consultation process would in any event be required every 3 years to keep an existing PSPO in force. The local authority must consult with the following groups before seeking to make a PSPO, which are the same groups that I've mentioned previously. In relation to enforcement of these orders, they may be enforced by police constables, police community support officers and council officers, but as I've said previously, this would only be supported initially by police officers, because we do not have any officers within the council who can undertake this activity. It is important to note that both council staff and police community officers do not have powers to stop vehicles. Therefore, only the police can enforce and breach a PSPO at the roadside. If criminal offences have been committed, the police will follow the criminal law and report offenders for pre-existing criminal offences, for example, excessive speed, careless driving and excessive exhaust noise. This is a construction and use offence under existing road traffic legislation. So it's not per se to do with the PSPO. They can add additional legislation in there under the Road Traffic Act to take people to court. Given the limitations of the council staff powers, it's imperative that the police and joint partners in the enforcement of the PSPO. So, considerations are contained within the financial and legal implications shown in the report. Consideration to make a PSPO, the council must have particular regard to Article 10, right of freedom of expression, and Article 11, right of freedom of assembly of the European Convention of Human Rights, as I said previously. In terms of timescale for implementation, should Cabinet approve, the Council will be required to advertise the order by public notice. The notice needs to be in place for a minimum of 1 month prior to the start of the order. The PSPO will rely entirely on Essex Police for attendance in the area. There is a reputational risk if the response does not meet expectations, certainly with local residents, due to the operational police demands, who may be directly affected locally. So that concludes the feedback from the report. I'd just like to thank Mel and the team for putting that together. And as I said previously, thank all the other councillors and people involved in the work that's gone on previously over the last, many years. So welcome to take any questions, but as I said previously, if there's any legal questions, I will point them directly to Jason over there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Savage, for a very comprehensive report on that. Members of the Cabinet, have you any questions to ask on that? Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Russ. A good report. Reading through it, they were saying that these are there sort of 9 p.m. till 2 a.m. and I'm guessing in the past that obviously the police were called within a timely manner. If they didn't attend then, what's going to make them attend now?
From speaking to Melanie and other councillors, I think that the fact that they've got the meat on the bones of this order, I think it's in their interest to attend. I think previously the circumstances around the police attending has been met with spotters who have been standing on the end of Canvey Way who've said, the police are on their way down, and suddenly they disperse. Whereas now these guys can just rock up at any time, from within the island, necessarily coming down Canvey Way, and just saying, hang on a minute, we've got a PSPO in place. It's time for you guys to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Councillor Savage.
And I think the conversation I've had with the police over this, it does give them the power, because before there was no dispersal order there, so all they could do is turn up. Now they turn up, they shouldn't be there. So that's the big difference, that if they turn up and there's some boy racers there, then they can tell them to clear off, because they shouldn't be in that zone. And I think it's very important that is advertised really widely, so everybody knows that is a zone. And I tell you what, the people in that area will definitely want to sleep peacefully, especially in the summertime when you talk about earlier on the Canvey is a basin. I live down the other end of the island, and you can still hear it then when they go around, because it echoes. And I think really this will give people a bit of peace of mind. Right, members, any other Cabinet members? No? Then Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you, Leader. And firstly, can I say thank you to Councillor Savage for actually progressing this. It's been going on far too long. And I can help him out with the previous question from Councillor Gibson. The police were very much reactive because it was dispersal order. So if they got complaints about boy racers, They then had to get in touch with the superintendent to sign the dispersal order, which only lasted for 36 hours. So by the time they did that, it was all reactive. Whereas a PSPO being in situ means that, like you say, if they just turn up, they're going to be able to deal with it. Whereas in the past, they've had to wait. Yes, they can go down there. And yes, we know in the past they've taken the cars away from people that were causing problems because they weren't roadworthy. We're talking about antisocial behaviour here, where people are going down there on purpose to cause disruption because they know it's an open space. The way they've moved from Thurrock, the way they moved from South End Seafront, it's something that gives our residents a little bit of hope that they might get the response that they need in eliminating this antisocial behaviour. You know, previous sergeants in this constabulary, the local PCT, have actually, local policing team, have actually gone down there, they've spoken to the residents, and they've actually gone down there and done a lot of work. But when, even with Morrison's and people like that, we tried to get the gates closed to stop them parking in there. We tried to, you know, they had a new manager, but they weren't coming forward. And it's a way of giving a bit of hope to people to know that they can, in the middle of summer, with all their windows open, get some sleep rather than having boy racers running up and down. And it's antisocial behaviour. It's a shame that we haven't got the video that was shown by the police to myself and Peter May 18 months ago, where they were actually filming it and people were hanging over the barriers looking at these boy racers. Like you said about Stanley Hope, somebody gets knocked down, somebody loses a limb, somebody loses a life. And we'd be thankful that no one has happened on Canvey at the moment. My big concern though, Russ, is in respect of the cost, the £4,000. How do we go about getting that £4,000? Does it have to come back to Cabinet for funding? And also, about 3 years ago, we actually had in the budget to be able to recruit 1.5 officers, enforcement officers, in the council to deal with litter, dog waste and things like that. If that is still in the budget and that's still available, can we recruit those? On the downside, those people have got to be with a police officer to issue that fixed penalty notice. So to me, that's a waste of time having somebody trained up if they can't actually just go and put a ticket. And to be quite honest, I wouldn't want anybody within this council to go down there if there's boy racers going up and down and say, I'm going to give you a ticket. The boys in blue and the local chief inspector, I'm sure, will support this. The police commissioner supports it. And it's just something that we need to do, not only for the people of Canvey, but I live up on top of the hill and I still hear it. So it is a bit worrying. If we start enforcing something in one space, they're not going to want to come back because there's a deterrent that, no, I'm going to get £100 fine. And although these cars that they're running around in cost a lot of money, but if they keep getting £100 fines and the police get on board with them, they're going to get more than £100 fine. So I welcome it. Hopefully we can get it in place. You know, we've had a lot of, last week's been quite a hot few nights and luckily we haven't had any complaints, but we've still got Thursday, Friday and Saturday to come, which could cause us problems. But thanks very much for bringing it on.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac.
So I think I echo your concerns about having an officer going down there. I see little point in it really if they have, and they have got to be with a police officer anyway. I think that's just unnecessary duplication and a cost to the council that we don't really need. As for the budgetary part, I don't know whether...
Refer to Mr Wasco, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. If Cabinet take the decision as per the recommendations, and they do so knowing what that implication, financial implication is, and the budgetary provision that will need to be required as part of that. So the budget will come if the decision is made, and it will be funded from the reserves.
Okay. Councillor Isaac, you want to come back?
Can I just come back on that? Because we haven't got another cabinet meeting until September, and we've got back end of July and August bank holiday, which delays it even further for the deterrent to be put in place.
Chairman, Mr. Wasco has just explained that if Cabinet takes a decision to implement the order, the money will be found in order to implement the order. It's implicit in approving it that the finance will go with it as well.
Councillor Savage, you want to...
Thank you, Chairman. So just to let you know the timescales and where it will go in the Echo. It will go in the Council's 16 notice boards. Hopefully we can get it on the Town Council notice boards, and we've got a good relationship with the Town Council. It'll be on our website, and we've suggested it will take 6 weeks because to get it in the Echo is going to take 2 weeks. And so we're looking at an implementation date after the 1st of September, just to let everybody know where we are with this.
Does sound a bit of a long time, doesn't it? Councillor Skibb.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, the police have been asking for this for a long time now as a tool they need to enforce this. So I do welcome it, as I'm sure the police do. And the fixed period notice is £100 may not seem much of a deterrent, but the issue is, as Councillor Savage alluded to, a lot of these vehicles may have no insurance. They will certainly fail construction and use. And allow the police to take even further action above and beyond that. So I think people may think, well, the fixed period note £100 is not very much of a deterrent. It's all the consequences of what might happen in addition to that. So I do welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now we've got cabinet members who will ask questions. That's a follow.
Thank you, Chairman. Just an observation, really, which I think is an important observation in this PSPO, that it doesn't just address, let's say, the performers. It also addresses the audience, and without the audience, I think the performers don't perform, and that's a big problem. I live on Canby Island, obviously, and this has been an ongoing and rather unpleasant experience for many years. The PSPO, I'm very pleased to see, includes activities covered by this PSPO, recording of the listed activities on any device. I mean, this is what goes on down there. You've got all of the car drivers doing all of their stuff, but it's the audience that encourages them and records it, and the filming and all of this. And this is Councillor Savage explained about the unfortunate accident with one of the bystanders in a previous event. So I think this will go a long way to addressing that, because it's not only the people who are driving the cars that are going to be subject to this and subject to those penalties. It'll be subject to anybody who wants to go down there and basically watch them, because they also will be breaching the conditions of the PSPO. And I think that's a very important point. And hopefully it will have the effect. And I'm pretty confident that it will to some degree. It may not solve it completely, but it needs to be done, and certainly I think it's something we need to support. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much, Councillor Savage. A very eloquent report. There was one element that you spoke about it doesn't preclude people from being nicked for other things, as per the law. And I think when this is in place and we do catch a few people, we need to publicise it so that people know it's there and it's working. And as we all know, when we were young drivers, if you get pulled up for something, they go through every single thing on the car. You're on the side of the road for an hour. So they've got to make sure that everything on their vehicle is squeaky clean, because they're going to get a lot more than the £100 fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Savage, for this report and the previous people doing a lot of work on this. It seems that everyone wants this. The authorities, the landowners and stuff, and people of Canby, people of Castle Point. And I agree with Councillor Fuller and his statement about the people attending. My question is where we're going to post these notifications, could we also do like we do in planning matters and post these notice on the areas where the people gather, where whether it's they meet first in Morrison's car park or they stand in certain places. I'm sure the police know where the people meet and stand and watch. Put notice there so people can't say, well, I didn't know, because if you leave them there for a while, they'll probably be there when they get caught. So that's just my thoughts on the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it'd be a good idea to put a leaflet in every Big Mac they sell at McDonald's.
We have discussed this, and they will most certainly be posted in the Morrison's car park area and the McDonald's and associated areas. So, yeah.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you. On the report number 6, corporate financial implications, it talks about £4,000. Is that the overall cost of the posters, or is that our portion of the cost? So are we, Essex Police, paying anything towards the initial setup costs, or the county, or even the town council? And also, you made mention, Councillor Savage, that that at the moment we've got no officer to actually enforce. Have we investigated, or can we investigate, can the town council, county, even Morrison's and McDonald's funding an officer for the longer term? And just the one question I had, if you don't mind, was that it says if the FPN is not paid, then the individual can be prosecuted, but obviously there's a risk of us potentially of £1,000 per case that we may not be able to enforce to get back. Will the decision for enforcement be ours or the police's?
Right, thank you. Ken?
I'll refer that latter question to Jason, if you like.
But before you do, can I just say that I think that the most important thing is to get it implemented. Yeah. You've then got 3 years to bring in anything you might want to train someone up if you decide you've got an officer in the council, but let's get it implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so if the fixed penalty notice isn't paid, the police then refer the matter to us to consider prosecuting the original offence of breach of the order. So there is a council prosecution policy that has been in place for the last couple of years. So we will obtain the evidence from the police, carry out an evidential review, and if there's sufficient evidence, then proceedings for breach of the original PSPO will be launched in the Magistrates' Court.
Okay. Mel?
Yeah, I'd just like to respond about the cost of the signage. We're often putting signs up, and we've looked at what it costs basically to put signs up and how many we're going to need, and that's what that figure's based on, with a little bit of room, but we will fit the cost of the signage into that figure.
On the other question that you answered, Councillor McLean, with respect to the corporate funding, we haven't looked at that, and I think that's a note that I'll take back and definitely we need to look into. So yeah, thanks for that.
Okay then, members. Is the recommendation agreed as set out in the order paper? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Item 7, matters referred to the committee, there are none. Item 8, matters referred to or from committees, we have dealt with that back from the Environment PSC under item 6. Item 9, exclusion of the public for the purpose of section 4 of the local authorities executive arrangement meetings and access for information regulation, as the business contains information relating to an individual or likely to reveal identity of individual exemption information under paragraph 1 and 2 of Schedule 12A Local Government Act 1972 to exclude press and public from the meeting to enable the business of the meeting to transact in private. Thank you very much. That means I'm afraid you've got to go.